What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. This is a slightly different episode insofar as I took myself out of the studio and decided to go and take you a little bit behind the scenes and take you on an outing to the National Stud Farm here in Ireland, and it's a pretty amazing place. Anyway, I'm only just going to do a quick intro to my guest today, but in advance of this episode, just want to apologize for any poor audio quality. I'm actually using the phone, so if you're listening to this online, then it's if you're listening to audio only, poor quality sound, I guess. If you're on video, it's pretty interesting to go and see where I am right now. But anyway, just my guest today is Omni Casey. Now, Omni was born in Hawaii, so he's one of the further away guests that I've had on the podcast, although he does work in America. He was born in Hawaii, and great episode, lots of interesting stuff. Omni grew up in a family that didn't like talking about finance and money making and all that kind of stuff, and he actually became quite good at it, but didn't like to share his story. And so today is anyone who is kind of shy and don't like to talk about their story, don't like to talk about stuff, this is one for you. There's a lot of stuff to be learned from it, and a lot of stuff, sort of tactical stuff on how to get started in the real estate industry, how to buy property and things like that. So hope this is of value to you guys. Sorry about the poor quality audio, not only here now, but also in the episode itself. My microphone was out of order on the day of the recording, so I had to use the in-house or the computer's kind of inbuilt microphone, which probably isn't as good as the studio mic that I have. So without further ado, my conversation with Omni Casey. You are listening to Behind the Facade, and I am your host, Gavin J. Gallagher. On this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously, both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. Omni Casey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here, Gavin.
It's great to have you, Omni, and it's going to be, as again I've said to this in the last couple of podcasts that I've done, I've actually been talking to people based in the US and stuff, and I'm obviously based in Dublin in Ireland. So for me, when I sort of say, where are you based, where are you calling in from, it's always an interesting answer. So tell us, where are you calling in from?
I'm actually from the US, and I'm on the East Coast. I'm near Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia area.
Lovely. And you said, we were just talking before we came on air, and you said you're originally from Hawaii, did you say?
That is correct. Yes, I grew up in Hawaii. All my family's still in Hawaii. Started my business investing career out there, and my wife's from the Northern Virginia area. So at some point, I told her, hey, we could do real estate. We can do real estate anywhere we want. And she quickly, a few weeks later, decided, all right, we're hopping on a plane and heading back towards the East Coast where her family was. And it was nice to be able to have that option.
Great. Well, Omni, and I pronouncing your name correctly, and thank you for filling me in on how it's done. But for anyone who's listening, it's spelled O-M-N-I, and a lot of people will be thinking, why isn't Gavin calling him Omni? Anyway, let's get on to the, you've written a book, and we're going to get into that. But before we do, I mean, the book is the Cash Flow Breakfast Club, and it's all about your real estate lessons and stuff like that. But before we get into all of that nice detail, I would like to give people listening a sort of a little context into who you are and how you've arrived at, this stage in your life where you're writing books about and giving advice and helping coach people in real estate. So could you just give us a little bit of maybe backstory, a little context fill in, paint the edges for us a little, and just so we have an idea how you arrived in the real estate industry?
I'd be happy to. I don't tell my story that often. I'm fairly new at telling my story, and I actually resonate with your story a lot, Gavin. Had some success over the last 20 years in real estate investing, but primarily I have not shared that with friends, with family, with colleagues up until really the last couple years or so. And that's probably a personal limiting belief of, people are going to judge you or whatever it may be. I chose not to. And so now being able to talk and share my story is rewarding, although very nerve-wracking. It usually leads to being able to help people. So I'm excited about that. But as I mentioned, I grew up in Hawaii, very entrepreneurial family. My father owned several businesses, roofing, construction, waterproofing. Some of our childhood jobs were like on the construction site. So been around properties and real estate and hard work most of my life. And my mom was an entrepreneur as well. She ran many home-based businesses through catering, through gift baskets and customer service. And that allowed her the freedom and flexibility. One of her goals was to be able to homeschool me and my siblings. And there's 8 of us. We have a very big family. There's 10 total, 8 siblings.
And sound like an Irish family.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so at some point they just say, you know what? We want to be able to control the education and provide the quality that and beliefs really what was important. And so they homeschooled us and provided that ability, and I'm grateful for that. At some point, we all chose to go into public education or various forms of education as we grew older to get more involved in sports. But it really was the freedom or the flexibility for them to choose that, that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I never really knew what I wanted to be. Like some kids know they want to be an astronaut or a firefighter. I never knew I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still working on that. But I did know I never wanted to be an employee. I just, there's something soul draining about the concept. And it's probably because I had role models who were not employees that kind of took their own schedule and life in their hands. They won and lost with their own efforts. I love that concept. And so I got into business building and actually started several businesses throughout the years. Eventually I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it's a very popular book by Robert Kiyosaki. He's from Hawaii as well, so it kind of like connected with me. And I don't know if it changed my life. Maybe it did. It validated what I was feeling, validated what I was thinking, and up until that point, felt like I was maybe weird because everyone's talking about their dream job going up, and I was like, that sounds terrible. And so that helped me along the way to kind of say, all right, here's a path. Eventually found real estate. So I like real estate. I love business. That's what it comes down to. It turns out real estate is an amazing business. There's beauty in the business of real estate. So I became a real estate investor. I've been doing that for almost 20 years. Along the way, I also got my license in 5 different states as an agent and a broker and a coach. And turns out, I love coaching and training on this. So there's so many things that are involved business-wise, but it all ties to real estate, and my identity has become, Omni the investor guy, and so that's, once again, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but that's who I am, and it feels good to, maybe I kind of had an identity crisis most of my life. I finally have that identity that I'm proud of, and I'll probably be that for the rest of my life.
That's a great way. And so, in terms of, you've never been an employee. So, I mean, tell us some of the jobs that are some of the businesses that you created, because I can relate to this. Like my first job, or my first business, we'll say, was a fake ID business when I was back in school. And I called it a business because it was my pocket money. And then I got into car valeting, and I used to, every weekend I'd go out and I'd clean cars. And it was actually, in my view, it was very lucrative business compared to working in a bar or working in a cafe or something like that. I made, good money as far as I was concerned. So tell us about some of your early stage businesses that you started.
I love that. And to say I was never an employee is not accurate, because at some point I got jobs. I just made sure that there are always jobs that I can control my outcome. So they're typically in sales. at some point in Hawaii, I sold surfboards, and I was part of the biggest surf company in Hawaii, and we taught surfing, but my income was directly related to my efforts. Is really what it came down to. I started a retail business with some college buddies in the mall. We had a store in the mall. We we don't know anything about retail, but we wanted to be our own boss. We got a small location and slowly expanded beyond there. I quickly realized I hate the retail the business, right? I hate the retail side of things. And
what were you selling?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What were you selling in the retail business?
So we were still teenagers at that point. So things that we cared about. So it was clothing. It was really customized belt buckles, and we were attracting people basically of our age, right? That don't know what they want to do with their life, but they want to look cool. So we had those things as well. And I got the crash course in running a business, understanding that you need to pay your lease no matter what, whether you have a profit or not. Understanding you can't hire employees if there's no profit. So if you don't have any profit, you have no employees. You are the boss and the employee and the janitor at the same time. Yeah, so a lot of hard knocks, lessons, which I value. It just was not it drained my soul to be in a mall the entire day because I felt like I was still an employee, although I was an owner of the business. And eventually surfing. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't no time for surfing once I committed to that. And then real estate really gave me that freedom, that focus to say, all right, here's the creativity. Every single, transaction, every single property, there's some creativity that I'm able to use. And I control the outcome of how profitable that will be.
I've actually when I started a project, a big project, about, I suppose at this stage it's about 13, 14 years ago, and I couldn't get any tenants to move in, any retail tenants to move in. So I decided I'll start the first one. I'll start a retail business, and when people see how well it's doing, they'll all want to open stores in that development. And that was the theory anyway. And so I started a ladies' fashion boutique, and I brought a lady in as a partner who kind of did all the buying and stuff. And I realized very quickly that I don't like the retail business. And some of those lessons you discussed totally resonate with me, because I was the landlord and the business was supposed to be paying me, and I had to kind of forgive the rent because there was no rent. There was no way that this business was making enough money.
I'll say the aha moment I had during that process was looking around. We made friends with these other retailers, right? And some were successful, some were struggling, some were just starting out, and the common denominator was everyone was paying rent. Everyone. So the one person winning no matter what was the landlord. And I was like, that was the aha moment. I'm like, all right, I need to, fire myself from this position and figure out a better way to be the landlord.
And so that was a great, insight there. And it's interesting. What age were you when you started the process of kind of getting into real estate itself?
I was early 20s, maybe 21-ish or so. Thinking about it for a while before that, but my first acquisition and get actually like committing to it, right? So it's the learning process before that, but until you actually dive in and make a commitment and say, this is me, I bought this, or this project I'm working on. And since then, it's the only field that I've really poured all my effort into through multiple angles.
Right. And that first deal, was that after you read the Rich Dad Poor Dad?
It absolutely was. So Rich Dad Poor Dad put me on a path of business, right? And understanding, business. And it wasn't specifically real estate at that point. It was just business in general. And it was actually while I was working at this surf shop, selling surfboards to people that have way too much money to spend on surfboards or whatever it is. And it's on your mind, right? So you're thinking about it. And so you're just kind of talking to it about everyone. And the people I'm working with are like, that makes no sense. What are you talking about? And it really, I met some of my first mentors through as customers of that surf shop and just talking about it. And they're like, well, what do you do? And you're buying a $3,000 surfboard. No one in their right mind should buy a $3,000 surfboard, right? So tell me, business owners, and then real estate investors. And, finally found a real estate investor that we connected, right? We connected on surfing, we connected on a few things. And then I just kind of slowly just weaseled my way into like, I'm just going to help you. Like, I didn't even ask, can you be my mentor? I just said, hey, I want to help you. What can I do? I want to add value to you. And he was like, okay, we'll show up at this place tomorrow. And it was history. And I did a lot of grunt work for a very long period of time, and kind of helping him on transactions, learning just concepts of things that didn't even have names back then. Like, he did the Burr strategy before the Burr strategy was a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's brilliant, right? And so, and taught me how to find off market deals, and slowly be less grunt work and more of a partner by showing the value that I can bring him as well. And then eventually saved up enough money to finance and fund my own deal, and just kept snowballing that from that point forward.
And tell me this, like, describe that that first deal that you did. Were you petrified, or by this stage were you confident? How were you feeling?
Well, great question. So the first deal, it was with someone else, right? So it was, to be honest, I was extremely excited. I was like ready to jump in because he was really doing it, right? I was like learning, and so I give a lot of credit for people that can do their first deal on their own. Right now, I do a lot of deals on my own. Most of what I do is just me and my family. That being said, I don't know if I would have done that, right? Because I had the luxury of having a mentor, or at least someone that's willing to kind of let me partner and tag along. And so I kind of got the repetitions of the confidence before all my own efforts and all my own money was on the line. And by that point, I was just confident because I've done it a handful of times at that point.
And when did you decide to kind of break away and do it by yourself?
So it was probably a 1.5 to 2 year process with a few different, and once I got into the circle, I realized, all right, I need to be talking to more and more investors and learning, and so found several good people, in terms of the investor community still back in Hawaii. It was really when I realized that, one, it's great learning from them, but most of what they're doing is in Hawaii, and it turns out Hawaii is really expensive, and I'm starting out. I don't have enough money to really do that. And I wasn't comfortable taking money from anyone else. I wasn't comfortable raising funds. I've never been comfortable with that. And it's not to say it's a great business plan. The reality is, because I wasn't ready to tell my story or talk about it, is almost like I got to figure out how to do this on my own. And that meant I need to find other markets that my investors were not my mentors were not investing in. And that's when I started looking at overseas, in the States, on the greater part of the US, and they weren't investing there. So that's when I kind of broke off within a 1.5 to 2 years to start finding my own cash flow rental properties, basically.
And so did you move lock, stock and barrel to the US mainland, or were you trying to do it kind of remotely?
I was doing it remotely for quite a while, actually.
Okay.
So I moved to the mainland maybe 10, maybe 11 years ago. But my investing career started way before that. So I got really good at being uncomfortable because I'm a very hands-on person, and I grew up in a construction background with my father, so I feel like I could do a lot of things, and actually it got easier for me as I started to invest remotely, because when I was investing in that area, the reality is I wanted to do a lot of the work myself. I wanted to go swing a hammer. I wanted to, right? And there's a certain satisfaction with that. But the reality is that's not scalable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was able to say, all right, I got to fully vet, hire, trust, find a system to hold accountable people, a good team to run this project for me. And once I perfected that, it became much, much easier. And that's scalable, because that is a fraction of your time. Sure, you're paying people to do the work, but if you're doing more deals, it just becomes a bigger portfolio at a faster rate.
And so are there any sort of tips or strategies, or, like, if you're going to do that kind of remote working, because obviously you're hugely reliant on a couple of trustworthy people at the other end. So what would you say are the number one things that, if somebody was thinking of doing something similar, where would you say is the best place to start?
Yeah, it's always an evolving process, because even to this day, if I'm trying to break into a new market, right, I still feel the butterflies, because there's like, I know my market, I know the markets that I'm in, and I'm comfortable, I can just buy it. But I'm like, that looks like an interesting market. So I've evolved my process over the years. What I do now, which is not what I did back then, but first thing I do is I actually find and try to network with good investors in that area, and get to know genuine good investors, not for a mentorship at this point, but just say, hey, how can I help you? And it's typically I'm willing to be a private money lender and fund on their deal. Like, what, a small project, if they're doing what I think I want to do in that area, how can I partner? Can I fund in some way? And that allows me to put eyes on their project, and it's more resources, not time, and learn and dabble on whether or not I want to be in that market. And then at that point, I build a good relationship. I decide if I do want to go in, then I have the benefit of connecting with their team, interviewing their team, see if I want to use them as well, and then maybe get more recommendations. A lot of what I do is cash flow, so it's buy and hold rentals. So the most important two people in my team are my real estate agent and my real estate property manager, because I rely heavily on the boots on the ground. And sometimes I need to do renovations, sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small. So the contractors are involved, but by far, I usually get those recommendations once I get my agent and or my property manager in place.
Yeah, that's a great thing. And I mean, in terms of, you mentioned mentors a couple of times. Like, what was the best piece of advice that you got from your mentors?
Best piece of advice. Yeah, it's probably how do you phrase it? Work really, really hard to be unemployable.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it. But over the years, I was able to figure it out, work really, really hard to become unemployable. And then the second part of that is, fire yourself as often as possible. So once again, that comes to that entrepreneur business owner mindset. Unemployable means you never want to work for anyone because, one, you think you have a higher value, or you don't want to be tied and you want that freedom. And I think I've had that mindset, but I think I had to earn the right to be unemployable, because for a very long period of time, I didn't want to be employed, but I needed employment, I needed income. And so I had to work really, really hard to be unemployable. And then the fire yourself as often as possible, it really, in the later part of my career, has paid off. It's always figuring out, how do I build a business? And I don't like the word retire, because I think I'm going to work forever. I love what I do, but always figuring out how to exit to the next thing, and putting the right people in place. It's who, not how, and hiring the right people to still run a profitable business where you can take a step back, you can do something, oversee it, have the income from the project, the investment, or the business. And then if you want to retire, great. If not, then it's, what are you building next? And I love building things, and I'm always going to be building things. So I got to fire myself quite often so that I can continue to build things.
And so, in all these situations that I've seen over the years, the investment business can be a roller coaster ride. And we talked about this at the outset. I mean, did your first couple of deals go really, really well, or did you have any nasty surprises during your portfolio?
I've had, so I would love to say every single one of my transactions were brilliant and I was a master. It doesn't happen that way, right? The reality is I have lost money on deals. I've done deals that should have been 6 months that ended up being 2 years, right? And just as recently as during the pandemic, like the supply chain, I had a very quick, I don't do a lot of fix and flip projects, but every once in a while when I buy a portfolio, there's a property in there that, all right, I'm not going to keep that one, so I'm going to renovate it and sell it versus keep it. And this should have been a 3-month, maybe a 4-month, rehab. Ended up being close to 2 years just because of supply chain, because no one's, checking on permits, no one's working, right? And I'm not to say I'm the only one that had that issue. However, if that was the only deal, if I was like relying on that deal, I don't know what I would have done, right? And so it's the reality is you always have to have the backups and the protections, because not every deal works well. I will say I think I've been luckier than most, because my strategy has rarely been reliant on equity, rarely been reliant on appreciation, natural appreciation. I do focus on cash flow more than anything else. Not to say that equity is not beautiful, it is. But if I buy a property today and it doesn't appreciate ever, or it drops in value by half, my initial strategy will still work because that cash flow will make sure it's always a good investment. Clearly, if it appreciates in value and you're able to refinance or you're able to do something and pull out equity, that gives you the chance to recycle your money and accelerate faster, but it's not a requirement, for the strategy that I use.
Interesting. And do you have any, habits or behaviors that you would put down as being particularly, success, a contributor to your success?
So I think that's a really good one. There's several. I think I'm really stubborn. So I'm not afraid to fail. And maybe it's because I wasn't telling anyone that I was failing, and so maybe I really am afraid to fail publicly, and so that's why I kept my journey a secret for most of my career. But personally, I'm not afraid to fail. I'm willing to do it as long as I'm making a calculated risk, and I know that the upside's way bigger than the downside there. And if it does fail, I have a backup plan, and plan B is still gonna hopefully be okay. So I think that's key. But several years ago, just completely changed my life, changed my business, was when I kind of implemented the miracle morning concept. So I'm not a morning person at all. Never have been, probably never will be. Hal Elrod, I don't know if you read the book,
Yeah,
but
I read it. Yeah.
it changed my life. It really has. I realized that I've been living in a fog my entire life. That's the only way I can describe it, because as you know, if you put yourself in this intentional state in the morning before everyone wakes up, and you're slowly pulling the layers off of the fog, and you're putting yourself in what is called the flow state. And if I'm able to get a good hour or 2 hours or 3 hours in this hyper focused flow state, I probably get more done in those 2 or 3 hours than the entire week combined with distractions, right? So if I kind of do the calculations, where normally in a normal day I might have, sure, I'm working 8, 10, 12 hours because I work hard, but is it really productive with all the distractions? It's maybe 30, 40 minutes of real productivity. And if I'm able to get 3 hours of productivity in the morning, like, it's almost like I have 2, 3, 4 times as much time as anyone, else that I'm competing with. So I call that my superpower. I call that me lifting the fog. And that's probably changed and has allowed me to even dream bigger than what I was doing at that time.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'm a big proponent for the early mornings. I get up at 5 every morning, and I go and I have a whole sort of routine, a little bit like the miracle morning that you go on about. I was going to ask you obviously you've established yourself now as a broker as well, as an agent broker, and you have other brokers working for you. Tell us about that process, about, because being an investor and then starting a brokerage business was that kind of a strategy to get more deal flow, or tell us about your decisions around that?
Absolutely. And I get the question a lot because I am a broker licensed agent. I'm in 5 states, and I don't actively practice and help people buy real estate anymore. I'm more on the coaching and training side. But a lot of people thinking about getting into real estate investing say, do I need to become a real estate agent? And I say, absolutely not, right? It's not a requirement by any means. I just didn't have access to a great agent when I started out. And, data is so much different now and things. So I'm glad I did. And I absolutely would want to do it over and over again if I had to do it over again. But I don't know if I would have. If I had an amazing real estate agent that knew how to help me in my unique needs as a real estate investor, it probably would have gone a different way. And so it was out of necessity I got my license, because I'm like, right, well, I need to control the information here. No agent that I talked about really knows, like, they don't even invest in real estate themselves. So how are they going to help me? And so that was really the concept. And it was really solely for data and information. And then I stumbled across my first client and helped them buy a home. Like, literally stumbled. Someone walked in the door. I'm right in Waikiki, right across the Waikiki beach. Someone walks in. I'm the only one looking up data. They're like, hey, we're looking for an agent. And I'm like, there's no one here. Like, well, we're looking to buy a home. Can someone help us? I'm like, there's no one that can help you. And then they're like, well, what about you? Are you an agent? I'm like, well, I guess I am an agent, right? And so almost reluctantly helped someone buy a home, right? I'm not saying it's that easy to pick up a client every single time, but the reward that I found helping them, right? It's just a little bit different. And then the economics of it, the business side of it. It is a very scalable business. And so I started to dive in, found a mentor on the real estate agent brokerage side. I said, all right, if I want to put some time and effort into this as well, I'm working on my passive income for through real estate investing, but it's easier if I have active income. So can I work on my real estate agent business for active income, and could I get really good at that? And was lucky enough to make a lot of money as a real estate agent as well, and that funded and accelerated my ability to buy real estate. And so almost everything I made, I pour into real estate investing, and then that funds the passive side of our life.
So it was reinforcing it the whole time.
Correct.
And was there a particular sector that you were sort of brokerage in deals in? Was it residential? Was it commercial?
Yeah, primary residential is really what I did, starting out in Hawaii, where half my career was. And, on the investment side, quickly shifted to multifamily, small multifamily. My specialty is I buy portfolios from a landlord, like a mom and pop landlord that might own 10, 12 buildings, small residential properties. It's often hard for them to exit at the same time. Selling them one at a time is a pain, or sometimes they can't even do that because they're all tied to one portfolio loan. And their lenders say, no, you need to exit it all at the same time. So over the last few years, my focus has been really helping them exit. And, I get a discount because of that. And they're happy about that discount because it's easier for their life plan as well. And then I typically back my way out of some of that portfolio. I sell off the ones that I don't want in the portfolio. I typically don't keep single families anymore, and then keep small multifamily or mid-sized multifamily. So my main focus is buying mid-size, but I do quite a bit in terms of I've had pieces of land, development projects, commercial buildings be a part of these portfolios, because if it makes sense cash flow wise, that's where I start. And then I can back out of just about anything, with the appreciation or value add plans.
And tell us about your decision to move. I mean, you mentioned that it was because of your wife that you moved to the mainland. Is it?
Yes, that's it. Her family's from here. So we actually tried to convince her parents to take an early retirement, move out to Hawaii. And they did actually. They did it for about a year, and they're not ready for retirement. And so at some point they moved back to Virginia. And I just saw how that impacted my wife. And not to say I don't need my family. I love my family, but all my family was there, and we had them this entire time. So I kind of had this conversation, and I was mulling it over for a while. I'm like, I can get my license there. I can invest closer to that area. It makes sense. Real estate gives you the freedom to be able to do that. And I said, hey, you know what? We can be successful anywhere we want. If you want to go there, we'll make it work. And I'm like, there's like a 3-year plan in place in my head, right? Because I have active transactions going on. I got to close these out. I got to set up my team to exit. It was probably closer to 3 weeks from that point, from that conversation, that she was on an airplane, flew over there. So she was excited, and I had to just figure out, like, all right, we didn't have a great transition plan, but we made it work, and we set up our business out on the East Coast, and it's been great. Love it.
So a month, basically, between the decision and actually moving.
Correct.
That's pretty fast, yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that to most people or anyone really. Not what I expected, but looking back, blessed that we had the opportunity to do that.
And did you sell any of your Hawaiian portfolio, or did you retain it?
Yeah, most of my Hawaii portfolio did get sold off. A lot of them had partnerships, starting out. And so moving forward, really tried to build our portfolio without partnerships, really. And so anything that was overcomplicated in terms of reporting and things like that, we did sell off. And so that's kind of what our decision-making process has been.
Yeah, it's nice not to have anyone else involved in the deal. So it's kind of entirely.
Yeah, it's still, and like I said, I like helping people. But I don't like reporting to anyone. I don't like having the obligation of, so it's just, my portfolio, I report to my wife, or my wife, checks it, but that's about it. And so it's a nice setup so far.
And I mean, for people who are listening that don't know anything about Virginia, I mean, what are the demographics like there, like with the capital city or the main city?
Yeah, we're Northern Virginia, narrowed down even more. We're in Loudoun County. So economics wise, we are typically the highest earning income per capita in the United States. And the second highest is our neighboring county. And the third highest is like 2 counties over. So there's a lot of money in this area. There's a lot of government contracts. We're 45 minutes from DC. So it's a beautiful area, kind of close to country, but there's just economic booms in this area that we've been blessed with for so long. The downside of that is it increases real estate values so much, right? So it's very, very expensive for your typical person trying to live here. If you bought real estate last year, you're happy because it went up. If you bought real estate 5 years ago, you're happy because it went up, right? So there is a lot of appreciation in these markets, and you got some markets with an average sales price of $600,000, and you have some markets with an average sales price of $1.2, $1.3 million or so, and then you have the grand mega mansions that are maybe most of our politicians and senators might live in right down the road as well. So it's a beautiful area. It's very diverse. It is really a cultural mixing pot as well, which I love, because that's growing up in Hawaii. That was very similar thing with so many economic and backgrounds, to learn from and benefit from, and so that's where we live.
And in terms of just as a kind of an aside, I've noticed that when you've got good capital appreciation in a kind of city location or something like that, often I find that the yield is quite low in terms of rental yield. Is that what you found as well? So it's like it's the big ticket price with lots of appreciation, but you're only probably eking out 3 or 4% or something like that.
The trade-off in buying in any market with appreciation is typically it's gone up so much in value, and because it's not right now just started to appreciate, right? It's been appreciating for the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and the rents never scale to the same level. And so in high appreciating markets, you're not going to get that cash flow. Any market, though, that you look at, a sub-market of that market might not be appreciating as much, and the cash flow is a better range, right? So typically, I divide markets by cash flow markets and appreciating markets. And I know every market has a combination of the both. And when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to strategize, I want to do something," I just need to know what's your focus? Do you care about passive income? Do you need income? Do you want to retire at some point with cash flow coming in? Do you want to create a nest egg somewhere? I'm not a big fan of the big nest egg concept, because with inflation, it's always been an issue, but now it's a bigger issue more than ever, right? So you thought you needed $3 million in the bank. Turns out that buys you nothing anymore, right? So you need 10 million, and it's always this moving target that you'll never get to. So I like cash flow through rent, because rents do increase with appreciation typically, and it does scale with inflation better than most things out there. So I figure out, kind of explain that first, because most people just think I need to invest, but they're not thinking what, right? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong to be in appreciation or cash flow. It's just different. And if you're trying to get both, you're probably going to get subpar options for both. So go all in on appreciation. If you can stand not having the cash flow, you're going to have a better appreciating asset if you do that. Or go all in on cash flow. It's probably not going to appreciate as much, but you're going to have a better cash flow asset. So it's dividing the markets, dividing the properties. And that's why primarily I focus on the multifamily. Multifamily does not appreciate with the regular market as much, because there's not a lot of buyers for a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, or even something up to a 20-unit building. It's typically only investors that buy that, right? And the investors only based on numbers, not emotions. Where your single family home buyer, I'm going to pay $50,000 over because you put that beautiful granite in there, and it is emotion driven. So
yeah, it's so true.
I do focus on that cash flow.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that, because I can totally relate. I mean, you see when you go and view a property, and you can see maybe it's an open house or whatever, and somebody else is there, and you can see the husband and wife, and the wife is already kind of measuring the kitchen,
Sure.
And you just know they absolutely are going to be after that house. And whereas the investor will be kind of, no, I'm not hung up on that granite worktop,
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So Omni, tell us a little bit about your book, and I mean, what is the primary, driver and the primary lessons that you kind of expound.
Yeah. So the book's name is Cash Flow Breakfast Club. Finally, I'm excited. I got my author copy. It's not published out yet at the time of this recording, but I wrote it a few years ago, actually, and probably never planned to publish it. But I just needed to get my experiences on paper. And it was, I started to, once again, I mentioned I did most of my investing without publicly helping, training anyone about it. And really, most of what I do right now is, it sounds weird to say, like most of my actions are guilt driven. I have this tremendous guilt for not helping people along the way. People that I should have been helping, people that should not be thinking about or worrying about money to the level that they're worrying about it now. They probably could have been in a better place if I had the courage to just like open up, right? And my fear was they're going to reject me or tell me that I'm stupid or whatever. But I should have been able to get over that. So a lot of what I am is doing right now is trying to make up for maybe the sins of my past, not sharing it. And this was like therapeutic for me to write it down, thinking, this is it. And so I never really planned to publish it, but then that gave me the confidence to start training people. And I started training my agents, my real estate agents under my brokerage. And all right, if I could help anyone, I'm going to help them become financially free, because they're making a lot of money as real estate agents, but it doesn't really matter, right? The moment they stop selling homes, they don't make any money, right? And most people are not great at saving or setting up that passive income. So I've helped a lot of agents make a lot of money over the years, and still they're like, I don't know how to retire. And so that's been my focus. I started this kind of this group of just agents training, and it really was not just how to be an agent, but you got to go buy some investment properties. Like your goal needs to buy X amount of properties of cash flow to get to this financial freedom plan. So I created these step-by-step kind of processes. And the book, I eventually decided to publish it. Last year, I committed to publishing it, and I rewrote it in a parable format. So I took myself out of the equation, a lot of the exact same transactions and stories, but it was more comfortable. I realized that the block was I never really wanted to tell my full story. Hesitant about that. So I created this fictional character that just happened to live in Hawaii, that happened to grow up as become a real estate agent, that happened to start investing, and it's easier for me to tell that story. And so that's really what it is. So it's a story, it's a manual, and it's basically if someone says, hey, I need your help, I want to learn how to become financially free through real estate investing, it's basically what I would tell them over a 3 to 5 year period, step by step, put into the book.
So it sounds a little bit like Rich Dad Poor Dad, actually, isn't it?
Well, I would say my inspiration, obviously to get into this is Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it has very similar themes and concepts as well, and a lot of the lessons that are ingrained in me come from Rich Dad Poor Dad and so many other books, along the way. And so I reference books, I reference authors as well. Someone that finds a mentor and is learning through the mentor, and then you can kind of vicariously sit in this one-on-one, learning experience of this newbie, wannabe, slightly cocky investor, learning through the experience of this mentor that's kind of sharing the knowledge, and you kind of make some mistakes along the way with him, and you have some successes, and it's a journey, not a destination. But it's been fun writing it and fun talking about it.
Yeah, it's something that I've tried to do myself, is write a book, and I find it so difficult, the process of writing, whereas starting a podcast has been an awful lot easier. I find it easier to talk and ask questions and try to kind of create that, rather than sitting down over a typewriter or over a keyboard and just like typing away. So it's
definitely a discipline. It's definitely a skill I did not have. The Miracle Morning has a version for authors. So I read that. I'm like, all right, I'm already doing the Miracle Morning. Can I commit a segment of my time to just putting ideas on paper, right? Like I've taught thousands of classes and trainings over my life in terms of real estate. What can I pull from that and kind of just structure it? And they give you that structure. So I definitely would not have been able to just do it. But you're exactly right. The discipline is tough.
And so your book will be out soon enough. Hopefully we'll get the link, and we'll be able to.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that we include the link. OmniTheInvestorGuy.com is probably where it's going to be. That's my personal website, and then we'll probably funnel to that book in the next few weeks or so.
Just switching gears a little bit, Omni. I mean, as we're recording this, the 11th of March, we're 2 weeks into this awful Ukrainian invasion. And I'm just curious. I mean, the gasoline prices are increasing and all of this kind of stuff. There's going to be we already had an inflation issue, but there's going to be a bigger inflation issue.
Sure.
Do you think that's going to impact the market in any way?
Yeah, it's an odd time, right? It's a very odd time, and it's on the back of another very odd time, right? We're coming out of the pandemic, if we're officially coming out of that or not, but now we got to shift to this probably even bigger issue.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone in Ukraine. I had the benefit of going to a real estate mastermind a couple of weeks ago, and one of the attendees there, their parents, had family in Ukraine, and so you're able to, one, you just want to like cry almost, right? You just feel so bad for what's going on, but figuring out how do we kind of logically decide on things, and that same thing when COVID came along. One of the superpowers that anyone really can do is the ability to detach for a moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know who Jocko Willink is.
I know Jocko.
Very famous author,
Great
Navy
podcast.
SEAL, right? And so he puts on this leadership training that's just amazing. And part of this investor group that I was a part of mastermind last week in Sedona, Arizona. One of the things is we got to like hire his team to take us through combat training, right? And like do these laser guns, and you're going to give us something, and
that's echelon front, isn't it?
Yes, that's exact echelon front. So we went through that whole day. It was the most amazing thing ever, and you realize that all right, we're all some pretty smart people in that group. We're successful, smart people, but like we just look like idiots running around. Like they gave us very simple directions, like walk in a straight line, go talk to this person, and come back. And we couldn't do it because there's these distractions, right? We're looking down the scope of a gun that's not even real. And our focus is like this. And it wasn't until I had the ability to, they rotated who's going to be leaders. And I had the ability to be a squad leader or some sort of leader of my small segment group. And I went out there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to protect you guys. I'm going to shoot the bad guy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then like our, what are they called? The instructors, they just came up to me, just turned my gun off. He's like, there, I helped you. Now lead, right? And so I'm thinking like, I got to go out, I got to hunt, I got to kill, I got to protect. And then it really says, you got to detach. You can't do anything to help your people other than detach and lead. And so the ability to detach, now my focus was there, and I was able to do this. I'm like, all right, well, what was the objection? Right? Walk in a straight line, go talk to this person and come back. We can do that. Let's forget about the distractions there. So I guess that's a long-winded way to say, no matter what we're dealing with, whether it's Ukraine or COVID, finding moments, not the entire life, but finding moments where we can just detach and just have a clear view of how does this affect me? Where do I see this going to go? Because so many decisions are made on emotions, especially during war, especially during pandemics, and emotion usually is not a good indicator of sound business principles. And so if you can figure out exactly how do I detach and how do I think about what's going to go on there, yeah, there's probably going to continue to be inflation. It's probably going to increase at a higher level, especially when it comes to oil and gas and things like that. There's going to be a lot of fear. I think the stock market is just going to fluctuate quite a bit because it's just so fluid in terms of people reacting on emotion. But if we talk about real estate, the core principles are supply and demand. Core principles in supply and demand, and I don't know how it is, in various parts of Europe, but I'm pretty sure it's very similar to here. There's just such a drought of supply. There's just such a lack of supply, and we've been in that drought for a while. COVID, the pandemic made that even worse. And we had built up demand for a while, and then we had this like floodgates of demand, and so now we have like record low supplies, and it's not just because people don't want to sell their home. No homes are being built. No homes are being built for the last 10 years. The supply chain issue, and so if you just like logically look through, there is no way we're going to meet the supply, unless we can just snap our finger and magically make 1 million more homes appear. It just doesn't happen. Right. So there's going to be, you could plan out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. All right, we're slowly meeting that supply, but it's nowhere near that level that we need. And so because of that, I'm confident in at least my strategy within real estate. Do I think that there might be some values going up and going down in some markets? Absolutely. So I'm focusing still, once again, a lot more on the cash flow side, because if the values drop, the cash flow doesn't really drop. The cash flow typically stays the same, if not goes up. So
what about
it will be interesting.
Do you take on much debt when you're buying?
I love debt. I do. I love debt. I typically, over the last few years, a majority of my purchases are cash purchases on the portfolio side, and then I try to burr and refinance out of them. And so if I could add 30-year debt, amortized, that's my favorite. That's probably why I stay in the residential small multifamily space, because I don't love everyone like, and there's many friends that do syndications and big apartment buildings, and I've invested as an LP side on those, and it's cool. I know there's so much opportunity there. I don't love the forced decision that I need to make in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years because of the commercial debt, the balloon payments on most of those. I'm not against selling things, but I would love the option to never have to sell something. And if I'm having to refinance in 5 years or 7 years, I'm having to kind of wager on what that market's going to look like then. Yeah. So I do take on debt, but it's only amortized 30-year fixed.
Okay, fixed for 30. That gives you a great safety net, because you know exactly where you stand. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time. Omni, we have these final couple of questions that I ask all my guests, and I've actually thought up a new one that I started asking. I think it was Neil in one of my recent interviews, and I said that there's a spectrum of people. Investor, you're either a gambler or you're an analyst, and one extreme is terrible, and the other extreme is terrible because you'll do nothing or you'll overspend. Where would you say you find yourself in that spectrum?
I love analytics. I do. And I think one of my my superpowers has been really good at analyzing, because I do have those fears. I do have, and I'm my wife, who's a co-author on this book, is the most conservative person you'll ever meet. And so she's nervous about, so she owns a lot of real estate with us, but she would sell it all in a heartbeat, right? Just so the reality is, I need to learn how to, one, not just analyze, but be able to educate to that level as quick as possible so that we can make a quick decision, because many of these things you need to make a decision very quickly. So I'm probably weighted on the side of 60-40, more taking the risk, maybe a little bit more, but heavily conscious of the importance of the analytics, because I can't make a decision without the okay of someone that needs that full analysis there.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I asked you what's the best advice you ever got, but what is the one bit of advice that if you had the opportunity to speak to yourself 20 years ago, what would you say? What advice would you give yourself?
Sell nothing.
Sell nothing.
Buy as much as possible and never sell anything. Like, the only thing I regret is when I sell real estate. That's it. And not to say I haven't made a lot of money selling real estate, but the reality is, if I could have figured out how to keep everything that I bought, not to say it would have made sense, but that's really it. I'm in the mode of, I want to acquire and keep and improve, but that would be it. Sell nothing.
Yeah, it's funny when you look back at prices and you go, I can't believe I bought it for this and I sold it for that, and I thought I was doing great, selling at this big profit, and then 10 years on you look back and it's like, wow, if I had just held on. Omni, thanks so much for your time today. If people, you did mention your website, could you just mention it again, just so people want to do it?
Omni, the investor guy. That's my social media handles: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube as well. And but the omnitheinvestorguy.com is where the book's going to be as well.
Okay, and the book is The Cash Flow Breakfast Club.
Correct.
Well, congratulations on the book, Omni, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Gavin. This is a pleasure.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Omni Casey. He has a good book there that's coming out very soon called The Cash Flow Breakfast Club. I'll go and put a link below if it's out at the time of this podcast release. So, as usual, I'm going to tell you to go and subscribe and like the video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, please leave a review on the usual podcast platform. And as always, join the Facebook group and community, and you can kind of get in contact with me. One final thing I will say is, in a week's time, I'm going to be closing out the intake for the first mastermind course. So if you've stayed to the end of the video or the end of the podcast, this is your opportunity to join the program. If you're interested at all, let me know, get in contact, and I'll fill you in the details. We've had a couple of last minute sign-ups in the last few days, so it looks like it's going to be a good course. So hope to catch you guys in the near future, and speak to you soon.